What up, what up, what up, everybody? Welcome to my first stream as my own personal kind of platform. Shout out to if you are one of the, you know, tens of people that were subscribed to my YouTube channel before. I am now streaming on YouTube and on my own personal Twitch. If you've followed me, you know anything about me. You know that I've also streamed for my brand, Living Life Fearless, for quite a few years now. This is just gonna be my own personal thing as I go on this little side journey. And as you can see from the title, going from a pro hooper for 13 plus years to a full-time software developer, programmer, maybe. We'll see. It's something that I've been kind of really diving into and been enjoying. And I figured, like, why not? Why not just start live documenting this since I already go live a lot on my other channel and kind of just, talk about my journey, talk about decisions, and, talk about some of the latest happenings in, the space, and just kind of like discuss and code live and just kind of just shoot the shit. So welcome if you are tuning in or you're seeing this for the first time. But like I said, shout out to the tens, whatever, dozens of people that were subscribed to my YouTube channel. If you know, that was my channel basically just to dump a lot of my, hoop clips and whatnot for personal reasons and for recruitment, whatever. So now this is kind of transitioning into the other side of things that I love to do and I've kind of been falling into the last couple of years, which is full-time programming. Figure this out. All right, I think you guys can hear me. But yeah, like I said, without further ado, I just want to just keep this lighthearted. Talk about some of the latest things going on in AI and artificial intelligence, some of the space. So that's obviously things have changed a lot in the space overall. I can't obviously speak because I wasn't in that space as much in terms of full-on development, but I can speak about where things are kind of looking now from my experience of just kind of working on apps and projects over the last, I would say, like 8-9 months. I've been like full-on kind of just diving into this head first and seeing where things take me. I think like most people, I kind of start out just YouTube videos and tutorials and Free Code Camp was actually a huge resource for me. But I did not start from just scratch. I basically started out, my other brand, Live Life Fearless, if you don't know what that is. Full on kind of media brand where we cover creativity, artists, culture. We do a lot of interviews, a lot of articles. We have a team of writers, team of photographers. I kind of just show you guys my own website that I built on WordPress. Like most people started on WordPress, started out on something simple, something that you kind of build on and explore on. And over the years, it's become, much more complete and complex and like more feature rich. And, YouTube is a pretty powerful platform and tool. I think it's a great entry point for a lot of people. I know a lot of, developers, people have thoughts about it, but for me, it was a great entry point to like first kind of like dipping my toe into coding, which is more so on the design side of things, but I did do a few things in the back end in terms of actual programming with PHP and whatnot. But this is kind of where things started out for me, was this brand. Instead of paying somebody to build me a site, I just kind of learned how to do it myself through WordPress, and then kind of built it and upgraded and kind of learned a little bit of the ins and outs of web development and the processes of that just from doing this throughout the years. So this I've done for like 10 plus years now. So this is easy. WordPress has become like, second nature to me, and I still do build a lot of other people's websites on WordPress. That's kind of what I've been doing last few months for, work and whatnot, is testing my hand out, building out websites, creating ideas, designing for people, looking at people's sites, upgrading it and whatnot. And, that's kind of getting my hands on in that way. Great entry point is WordPress, Shopify, was it Squarespace, the other one? But WordPress is the one that I was most comfortable with, the one that I've done for the longest amount of time. Just from this, my personal brand, my personal, kind of company. So this is where I started. This is where the journey really first started. But overall, it's come a long way. I feel like with WordPress, you definitely hit a little bit of a wall in terms of what you can do. As powerful and as like robust as it is and can be, you quickly run to the thing of like resource management and just the amount of plugins and extra things that just bloat and break and just becomes very unwieldy to work with. You want to do things outside of what it's mainly made for, which is, CMS, which is content management systems and blogging and articles and whatnot. I even actually built a social network on WordPress just to kind of get a feel of everything it could do and like get my own impressions and thoughts about the whole process of building something like a social network. If you guys know WordPress, I used BuddyPress. Actually, I don't even know if BuddyPress is still around. Good question. It was actually very dope. Very dope plugin. It is still around. It was the first kind of like plugin that allowed you to build something like a social network. Pretty robust. I will say it was pretty robust, but also had a lot of limitations, and you just run into a lot of things in terms of like you don't control the code. You always having to look for support, and it just becomes, you start doing things that WordPress just initially wasn't made to do, and even though you can do it, you're just not going to be able to do it very well, and that became a little bit of frustration. So I kind of abandoned that route, and then my next kind of road was Ruby on Rails. Ruby on Rails was the first full-on kind of programming project I did, which was build a full-on social network called The Collective. I think I built that back in like 2013, maybe 2014, 2015, somewhere around there. This was before obviously AI and all these other things coming together and helping you build. I was doing it the old school way, which is just Stack Overflow and YouTube videos. And it was a headache, to say the least. I remember the good old days. Like, it was fun. I actually did it. I actually built out a website. I had users on there, did all the testing. I had like, audio uploading, video uploading, image uploading, all the whole on chat system, a Discord like kind of chat feature, which was honestly before Discord. Like, so I like really dove into it and I learned a lot from that experience. But again, the same things. It was just so early on, and just YouTube and Stack Overflow was not enough to build a robust, well-functioning app or platform that I know could grow into something a bit more. So like, it was more of a prototype for me than anything. Set it down after, I don't know, a year maybe, and kind of shifted my focus back towards what I was doing on the editorial sides. But that is kind of what like really kind of kicked my creative juices flowing in terms of programming, learning, like wanting to learn and wanting to scratch that itch and wanting to build things and wanting to like kind of take that next step into diving into this even more. That was, like I said, that was over 10 years ago. Obviously life happened. I did a lot of hooping. If you know me, you know. I did a lot of hooping overseas, 10 plus years. You're doing 9-10 months over there. So like, you're full on over there. Like, I was doing stuff on my spare time. I was obviously doing a lot of stuff for my other platform, but programming wasn't at the forefront of that. And as I started getting older, things kind of slowed down. Jobs become, a little bit harder to come by, but you also taking less jobs. You're not wanting to be gone for 19 months. And then things slowed down enough that I was like, all right, what else am I going to do? Like, I know I sell my other platforms. I still want to do a lot of things, but I wanted to scratch that itch, and that itch was only going to come from full-on programs. So I did I hopped on YouTube. I kind of looked with the course and the route that most people took to kind of become a self-taught, self-made developer and programmer was, Freed Code Camp was honestly the one that popped the most, and I did that. They said about 3 months. It took me about 3 months to get through everything: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. In terms of those three, taking my time, really diving into it, kind of really learning it out. It's a very, very useful platform, very, very useful website if you are trying to get into web development and web design and kind of learn the ins and outs. But it can only take you so far. So I kind of kept going on from there. But as an entry point, Freed Code Camp was life-changing, life-saving, and they will always have my full support because they helped me start on this full-on journey. Better than probably anywhere else I kind of looked at, even better than YouTube channels. So I definitely check that out if you're a person who's interested in kind of getting to that and seeing where things can go from there, and like seeing if you really enjoy the process of web development. Because if you don't enjoy the process of web development, this is I wouldn't see us getting into it because it is definitely a process. It's very frustrating. There's a lot of problem solving if you're not somebody that enjoys dealing with that type of side of things and problem solving and kind of almost like a puzzle and fitting things together. I would say this would not be a route for you to take. And obviously, with AI coming in and disrupting so many different areas in this kind of field, you have to really love this to want to continue to do this right now. And as you can see, like a lot of people have kind of left the field simply because, like, hey, like I don't know if they necessarily loved it as much as they did, and the money just quite isn't quite as abundant as it was before. AI became much more prevalent and widespread and whatnot. And I have a lot of thoughts and opinions about AI, but I will definitely tap into those as I stream more and more. I don't know how long I'm gonna stream for. I don't know how often I'm gonna stream, but I do think it's gonna kind of make this more of a regular thing because I like to talk out my own process. I like to talk. I feel like if you can describe your process, you can describe coding, you describe how you build something to a person who doesn't know anything about it, which I do a lot with my family, my girl, and whatnot. That just improves your own understanding and like really shows where you are strong at and where you might need to go touch up things and like figure out and kind of do your own research and learn a little bit more and like sharpen the tools a little bit in the area. So I always think like talking about it openly with people is honestly one of the best ways to learn. So I will probably do this pretty regularly because I code pretty much every day now, minimum 4, 5, 6 hours a day. I'm spending at my computer on the keyboard with VS Code, just hammering away, learning new things, trying new things out, and like kind of getting better and sharpening that tool. I know it's something that's going to take a long, long time, but I do feel like from where I started to where I am now, like it's quite night and day. I always had a really good handle of HTML and CSS just simply for the fact that to build on WordPress, to build on like these other things, and coming from like a design first mind viewpoint and frame of mind, like I do, and definitely design first more so than the technical side of things. Learning HTML and CSS was the easiest to understand and the most immediate way to see like results and things in your head being put onto the screen. Because once you get into like JavaScript and React and Python and all these other kind of like different languages, it might take you a while before you actually get to see something significant on screen. And then when you do see something on screen, if you are coming from a kind of like design aesthetic kind of way like I do, it's not gonna look good. It's not gonna look good. So like HTML CSS was the kind of first way to like really get me hooked and really like understand like you can make some really cool shit. Because I like to say there's like two kinds of programmers and developers out there. There's the ones that truly love coding, like the coding aspect of things, writing great, clean, perfect code, developing new ways of coding things, or like developing new techniques and like, figuring out how to squeeze out the the tiniest amount of optimization and speed from their clean code, and like being able to write functions or processes with the least amount of code as possible. And like that is a very admirable thing to do, and I think most programmers should obviously aim for that, because you want to write clean, good code that can be repeatable without bugs and issues and whatnot. But that's not where I come from. That's not like my main thing. That's not what really gets me going. What gets me going is the building process. I've learned that over the years that I am a builder. Like I like to build. I like to see things built. I like to have ideas and be able to put that on paper. And I think being able to code and be on the program was like an aha moment for me, and learning that like, oh, you can have an idea in your head, and within like, nowadays with AI and everything, within like a week, a couple days, you can have that idea working in real life. And that shit is like a drug for me, because if you're a builder, you just want to continue to build over and over and over again. And with the cheap availability of programming and coding, it's like being a kid in a candy store. Like there's no limits to pretty much almost anything you can do, especially nowadays. Even if you don't maybe know all the ins and outs of programming, with AI and with other things that can help you, there's so many ways of like being able to do that without having to spend like 4, 5, 6 months, however long months it take to learn that kind of new way of doing it. And just the ability to kind of without all these new prototypes, it's definitely like a drug, and I've definitely become addicted. I find myself thinking about coding pretty much every time I wake up. I'm like, oh, I have this new idea. Or what if I did this? What if I that? Like, if you don't love either the, like I said, if you don't love like the actual coding side of things, you might love the the puzzle solving, the planning, the building side of things, which was where I would definitely fall on. So like, I definitely do think there's two distinct areas of programs out there, and I definitely fall on the more builder side of things. I am one that likes to see the end product way more than the actual coding of it. Like, I don't mind the coding. I think there's some really cool things about it, but it's not really what gets me excited. It's the functionality. It's connecting things, all these disparate parts together to build something greater as a whole is what really gets me kind of going. So I fully kind of found myself falling in love with that side of things, and I don't see that kind of going away anytime soon because the possibilities, like I said, especially nowadays, are seemingly endless. Now, that's a good and that's a bad thing because you can lose focus. You can get so kind of swept away with what they call like feature creep. And I find myself having to catch myself doing that all the time because before you can even get like MVP out, which is the first prototype of an app, just to see that it's even worth kind of continuing on with the ability to kind of whip out so much new features and so many things in a seemingly fast manner, you can get stuck. Like, you can truly get stuck like in this swamp. And I've definitely had to pull myself out of it a few times and like make myself lock in on the key things that I need to do and want to do now, and then worry about all the extra stuff down the line. You need to make sure like the MVP is a working, functional thing that serves and fills a purpose before you start like thinking of all these things that might not even be worth it, or might not even be like shit that might not even be around by the time you even get around to those features. So like really locking in, focusing on like the core things of the problem and like figuring out if it's a problem that's worth kind of building a whole app for, and like something that people would actually want to use. That's kind of like the hardest thing to do now, because the coding difficulty has obviously decreased significantly with the advent of AI and like its ability to code at a pretty high clip. And like, of course it makes mistakes, of course it does things that, you know, can leave vulnerabilities and whatever, but like once you start kind of learning how to catch those things, you don't necessarily need to write every single line of code anymore. And like I said, it's a good and a bad thing. It's good because you can try out an endless amount of ideas and whatnot, and like it's like having a blank canvas with as much paint as you could possibly want. So like that side of things is very dope. But yeah, that's just kind of been my process, and that's kind of just been my experience so far with, you know, the last year or so, really learning how to code and like learning the ins and outs of everything. But I'm still learning. I'm still on this journey and like figuring things out, and I'm excited to see kind of where things go. And I hope to like kind of do this live as much as possible because, like I said, I think talking about it and like hopefully, you know, maybe building a little community around it is the way to go, because, you know, I do think conversations between people on the same path can help, you know, elevate everybody involved. I'm trying to see why I can't hear my. Thank you. All right, there we go. Couldn't hear myself, and I'd like to hear myself to make sure that y'all can hear me. But yeah, I don't really know where I want to go on this first stream. Kind of just go around this and that. Take a look at my first build after Free Code Camp. Actually, there's a couple. My first experience with Code Camp, Free Code Camp, is that it is a extremely useful platform, and the path that it takes you on really hammers and hits a lot of the key points that you are going to really need to know to be any sort of competent programmer or developer. So I do think they kind of like do a really good job of steering you down this path of best practices and just kind of the thought process and ideas of how one might go about developing something. I think it does a really good job of presenting that to you in a way that is realistic to how your process is going to be if you were to get hired, if you're going to start working in a commercial manner. So I do think FreeCodeCamp is extremely useful for that. I think it does teach some of the best practices from my brief experience, and it does hammer on a lot of things that you are going to see and run into immediately when you kind of start to get out there on your own. Obviously, with anything, like any course, it's not going to be able to cover everything out there. And I think the one thing I'll say about FreeCodeCamp is that they don't really touch on like APIs or frameworks or third-party stuff. They really only touch on the core JavaScript, the core HTML, the core CSS, like the core coding of things, which is obviously essential because everything else is built on that core. And without having a strong core or strong base, you're just going to lead to a lot of problems down the line. So I do appreciate that they really hammer those core features and those core essentials and core knowledge that you're really going to need to understand, at least when you start working with like all these other platforms. But I will say that I wish they did touch a little bit more. I think their React course could have been a little bit better. I do wish they touched on some frameworks or some third-party things a little bit more, because from my experience, you're going to be working a lot with these platforms. Yes, you can code in vanilla JavaScript, but you will not be able to compete in any sort of manner with the speed of things that are being built if you were just doing things straight vanilla. That is just not the seeming industry standard at all. You will find yourself pretty much in any kind of point. If you want to make this into a career, you'll be a freelancer, or you just want to do this for fun, you're probably going to find yourself working with a lot of APIs, a lot of frameworks, and a lot of third-party kind of resources. And they don't really touch on that. So I had to go to YouTube for a lot of that, a lot of trial and error, and a lot of, honestly, a lot of turning to AI to help explain things and help me understand why this, why not that, what's the differences. And just within like the year that I've kind of started learning how to code and to do things and build things, the amount of like new platforms, new frameworks, new plugins, new third-party things that continually come out can feel like completely fucking overwhelming, because like you're like, where do I even begin? Like there's so many different ways of doing the same thing, and they might only be different and kind of like seemingly on surface, at least minute levels. Those differences can have a huge impact on the way you develop and the way you code and the way you understand code, quite honestly. So I wish they kind of touched on that a little bit more. I wish I had a seasoned, experienced person from CodeCamp, because they do have a lot of those people like in videos and building these courses, like telling us what you should be looking for, what's the industry standard, what's the general flow in terms of like dealing with frameworks and like whatnot, and what's the pros and what's the cons. Like honestly, that's just something you're kind of gonna have to learn. Go out there and learn for yourself and figure out yourself, and honestly just code and build shitty products and build shitty apps until you kind of figure out like, this is what I like, this is what I don't like. Oh, this is why they're kind of shitting on this framework. This is why they kind of go to this one. Like you don't really understand the difference between all these different tools until you start using them. That's just the kind of nature of it. And if you're not a self-starter in that way, like it could be fucking overwhelming. And like I definitely see a lot of comments from a lot of videos, because I've watched a lot of videos about people asking all these like specific minute details about why you should do this, what platform, what framework. Like a lot of people want somebody to tell them, you should be using this to build this app. Like these are the tools that you should use, and that's it. But that's just not how that's just not been my experience. That's not how I think coding functions in any kind of sort of manner. Like there is not one end all be all kind of tool set to build anything with. I've used tons of them. Like I've tried out so many of them to just kind of figure out like what I like, What I don't like was the pros, with the cons, and like if you're not a person that's not willing to kind of go out there and just fuck up, quite honestly, and like fail and like build shitty stuff and like figure out all the problems of each kind of framework and each tool and whatnot, because they all have their pros and their cons and their flaws and whatnot. It's gonna be hard. It's gonna be hard to kind of be successful and kind of like feel motivated, because the amount of new things that continually come out can be overwhelming. And until you like go out there and just try things and just try them out, you can get stuck. You can get like this kind of place where you feel frozen and like not really knowing even where to begin or where to go next. And like, should I switch? Should I stay with this? Should I, you know what I mean? So I think the first, like, I want to say like my process was I did the tutorials. You know, everybody does the YouTube tutorials, like build your first app, build your first this, build your foot, blah, blah, blah. Like, and a lot of people talk about it is what's it called, like the tutorial hell. Like that is very much a real thing. And I can definitely see how somebody and a lot of people in general kind of get stuck there and don't get out of it. And because you are building functional apps, you are building things that work, that look cool, that like generally function. Like, and there's people teaching these that are very good at it and like obviously good at programming and coding and whatnot. And they are teaching you how to do it, but you're just following along like a straight up tutorial. And like, there's not a number of tutorials that you can do that's going to make you good at programming. It's just not. Like, I felt like I had a good grasp of, I think what, all right, here. The best thing about the tutorials for me was not the actual coding and not the actual programming, but learning the process of coding and the process of programming, especially if you're going to start working with other people or companies, and just like kind of the general process of how to start something, how to work on something in general, and like the overall flow of work. Honestly, that is the most important aspect of tutorials for me, was learning the process of coding and what is kind of like the generalized industry standard for building a app was. But beyond that, like the actual apps, I don't even remember all the ones I built. They're all pretty much collecting dust somewhere in my GitHub repository or on my hard drive somewhere. So like I didn't gain much from the actual coding, but I did gain a lot just from kind of learning the process and honestly like naming conventions from folders to files. Because when you start with other people and like they've been programming for a long time, or they've been programming in like companies and like this is what they do as a profession, and you start kind of like pulling things or pushing things that like are not, you know, standard to what they do, they're not going to be too happy about that. And kind of learning the different standards and like learning why this, why that, what's a folder structure for your project, like makes things so much easier to kind of plug in with other people and work on things together. So kind of learning that from the tutorials was one of the biggest things for me personally. Outside of all the coding and things, I didn't really feel like for as much as I learned from like all these FreeCodeCamp, all these other like kind of courses about programming, and like actually felt like I was progressing and learning a lot in terms of just JavaScript and coding and HTML and CSS and like doing the daily challenges and all this stuff. Like I didn't, the moment you start like building your own project, like you're going to feel like fucking lost, like completely lost. You're going to feel like, what the fuck did I just sign up for? Like, what did I get myself into? I don't even know like where to go, what to do next, how to start. Like until you start building things over and over and over again, like you're not going to really feel confident like coding or programming or like building anything. It took me a good while of just hands-on keyboard, no tutorial, no follow along, just building, just trying things, just fucking up like over and over again, like learning like, don't do this. This is why they say don't do this, because this might happen. Or like until you really get hands on computer, you're not really going to like feel like confident in that you can build something. And it probably took me I don't know, maybe honestly probably like 3 months of just pure hands-on computer building something until I truly felt like, okay, I think I can get out there and just pretty much start something on my own and feel confident in the direction I'm going. Of course, I'm always going to need some help. I'm going to go to Google, go to these AI platforms, ask somebody I know. Like, of course, you're always going to need that. I don't care how long you're probably still going to need that no matter what. I still look up basic, functions and whatever just for refreshers. But you're going to feel very much like I can do this after building those shitty early projects. And I'm not just talking like what's some knowledge people build, like to-do list and calculators and movie databases and all that. Like those not going to do much for you, especially when you start getting into complex features and complex apps and you start tapping into APIs and whatnot. Like you're going to find out like, oh, this shit, like there's a lot that they did not teach you or nobody will teach you until you start learning for yourself. That's just kind of been my experience of this whole journey of programming and learning so far. It's been fun for me. Like like I said, I'm a builder. And if you don't like problem solving, you don't like piecing puzzles together, you don't like, if you didn't grow up building Legos and doing all this other stuff, and like, I don't know. I don't know how enjoyable you might find this, because outside of like what most people think is just writing tons and tons of code, which is obviously becoming much less of a thing with AI and all these agents that can write the code for you. It's the problem solving. It's the figuring out, this is what I want to do. How do I get there? What are the pitfalls? What's the best way of doing this? Whatever. Like, until you kind of learn that and until you kind of start working with all these different kind of tech stacks and frameworks and tools, you're kind of going to be lost. So like for the first, I want to say 4 or 5 projects I worked on, like personal projects, I tapped into everything. I did a full-on HTML, CSS one. I did a full-on just JavaScript site. I did a full-on React app. I did a couple Next.js apps. And within that, obviously, I worked with like Prisma, Drizzle, different databases, started tapping into Docker. Like, it took me, 4 or 5 shitty one-off apps that I probably won't ever touch again to kind of learn the workflow that I like the most. And kind of what I've come to is React Router v7, Drizzle for my database, Better Auth for my authentication, and Docker for deployment. Like, that's pretty much my core tools in terms of building things nowadays. Down the line, I definitely want to tap into Python and learn more about it, and like kind of learn more about that side of things, because a lot of apps are built on Python. A lot of things are built on that side of things. So I definitely want to tap into that. But right now, like I said, it's been pretty much React Router v7, Drizzle, Better Auth, Docker, Shadcn, and Tailwind. Like, that's pretty much, from all the videos, from all the conversations I've had, that's pretty standard for a lot of people out there building things these days. I think obviously Next.js is probably way more popular than React Router, but the thing I liked about React Router is it's not so tied into Vercel, and it's not so tied into it doesn't, what's the word I'm looking for? Because it's kind of the same way I feel about Drizzle versus Prisma, where Prisma abstracts so much of SQL away from the actual, from you, that when things kind of don't work or break or like don't function as expected, it's much harder, I find it, to kind of like figure out what the core issue is. And I like being able to know exactly, this is what this is going to do, this is what that's going to do. Like, I don't need to jump through all these hoops and learn like a whole nother aspect of like SQL. And I feel like Drizzle's so much less abstract than Prisma, which is exactly how I feel about React Router 7. I feel like Next.js, as easy as it is to use and how quickly you can kind of prototype stuff and put something up with that and Vercel, which I've also deployed stuff to. I just don't like how tied in they are, and I don't like how like they abstract the core functions of like coding is. Like I like being able to see this is what this does, this is what this does, and I really kind of fell in love with the flow of loaders and actions, and then here's the here's the JSX. So I kind of really like fell in love with that side of it and like gotten pretty comfortable with that. So like so far that's been pretty much my tech stack that I kind of go to start anything is React Router 7. First thing I kind of reach for. And Better Auth, honestly, like it's one of the most I've tried a few. I've built my first authentication app or app that required authentication I built from scratch just to see. Like I feel like a lot of people don't do that. First starting out, they kind of just jump straight to these tools. I feel like you should do everything raw. That's what she said. I feel like you should do everything raw from the start. Like you should at least try and see what is going on and see why things are working they are and why they do certain things before you hop into these tools that abstract so much of the process away. Although they are generally what you are going to be using in kind of any major production these days, you do want to understand like why this is doing this, how this works, how they connect. And like from me learning how to build authentication, then hopping to Better Auth, it made my understanding of Better Auth a thousand times more in depth than it would have been if I just jumped straight to Better Auth, because there are some things in there that I would be fully confused about, like that they don't really tell you on the surface, and you have to dig really deeply in documentation. And sometimes the documentation isn't always the clearest or the most like upfront about what things are going on. It kind of just assumes that you understand how authentication works or certain things work, like SQL work. But if you don't have that kind of core handling of things and understanding of things before using these tools, it's just gonna be much harder, and you're gonna run into much more like you're gonna run into so many more problems because you did not kind of take that time to do it the hard, old school, traditional way. And honestly, authentication is not that difficult to build. But when you want to start, bringing in other things like invitations and roles, and you want to bring in third party integration, third party signups, all the things that Better Auth does, I would just automatically go for Better Auth. It's extremely well written, pretty clean. I haven't had any real issues with it. It's just if you're gonna use these tools, do it raw first. Just do it the hard way. There's a lot of tools out there to help you do it. Just do it because you're gonna learn so much just by doing it that way before you kind of tap in. So that's kind of been my process. Before I started using any of these tech stacks and these tools, I did it step by step from just ground zero, just HTML, CSS, and tiny bits of JavaScript, and just only JavaScript. Okay, only React. Okay, now let's check out Next.js. Okay, only SQL. Okay, now let's check out Prisma. Didn't really like Prisma. Let's try out Drizzle. Okay, what about deployments? Let's learn about Docker. Like you gotta kind of work your way up to it and like really do those steps before you can tap into all these much more powerful tools that are pretty much industry standard. So like I said, like that's probably one of the biggest things I learned from this whole process, is that as useful as these courses are, you're not going to really learn how to build anything worthwhile or production ready until you get your hands on some apps and start building shitty apps. Like you just have to build and build and build. And coming from basketball, like I understand that fully, like as being a hooper who's hooped for like 13, 14 years professionally, 4 years college, countless as a kid. Like you just learn that you got to put the time, like you got to put the hours in the gym. You got to get the shots up. You got to get the reps up. And like, this is just how I approach everything. And I don't think there's a lot of ways to skip it other than like, you just got to do the reps. And as you do the reps, you get better and better and better. And you're going to run some roadblocks and you're going to run some issues, but that's just going to make you so much better down the line. So when you see similar things or you run those same issues, it's no longer a problem. It's no longer a problem. In terms of AI, like, I don't know. People always ask me, like, when I was first starting out, this, like, oh, why don't you just use AI for everything? Why don't you just have it, build everything for you, and you just go back in and like kind of debug and like review things and whatnot. The way I used AI kind of first learning how to program, because obviously it's unavoidable, it's everywhere, it's being pushed by every kind of business everywhere you go. Like, they're probably going to make you use AI, so like you need to learn about AI, you need to learn how to code with AI, you need to get familiar, you need to get really very very comfortable with AI, because at this point, no matter where you go, pretty much no matter what you do, they're gonna force it on you. So like, why not kind of get comfortable with it? So it was never something that like, I fully wanted to shy away from, but it was never something I wanted to do everything for me. I think AI is as useful as you want it to be. Can it do a lot of these things by itself without kind of any input? Yes. Can it do it at a production level? No, no, not from my experience. And if you are just first kind of starting out and learning how to code, I would use AI as sparingly as possible. The way I approached AI when I was learning how to code and program was as a tutor, as a personal one-on-one tutor. Basically, when I first built my first apps, I built those on Ruby on Rails and all that. The first thing when you have a problem, is you ran to Stack Overflow. And the whole process, Stack Overflow, which honestly is much like AI is, you would present a problem, you'd have a question, and you would hopefully get an answer. You wait for an answer from a community of people that, knew how to program or code to varying degrees of levels. You might get some good answers, you might get some shitty answers. They only can, honestly, it's so much like Stack Overflow from my experience, because just like Stack Overflow, they only know as much about your problem as the amount of context you give people. The same way AI only knows the issue you're facing or what you're trying to build with as much context as it, one, can handle, and two, you give it. More context, it can probably get a lot closer to what you want and actually have a good, solid answer. But too much context, it kind of starts to go a little haywire. So the way I used it was literally as my own personal tutor. I would just do these challenges, do these, case studies, do all these things as much as I could by myself until I just hit an absolute roadblock. I would search the forums, and a lot of times those forums, like on FreeFlowGamp, are just not honestly that helpful. So I'll go to all the AI platforms and I would ask these questions, but I would explicitly say, do not give me the full answer. Just kind of push me in the right direction. Or I'd explain my thinking and ask, am I thinking in the right way? It'll either tell you yes, tell you no. It might give you a slight nudge, like you might want to check out this. So like if you specifically tell AI, like, look, I'm stuck on this. Here's what I'm thinking. Am I thinking the right way? Yes, no, no. Okay, can you kind of help me, point me in the right direction, but absolutely do not give me the full answer. And honestly, a lot of times I won't even need the full answer. I'll just need a little hint, a little push that'll kind of make me dig a little deeper into, my knowledge, my back catalog, or go search something else and then be able to come up with the answer myself. And like anything else you do, like you're going to learn something so much more by accomplishing it and doing it yourself. Like overcoming a problem or an obstacle yourself is going to speed up your understanding, your deep understanding of a subject, and obviously like coding and programming, so much more than just having AI do it for you. So the way I used it was literally just as a tutor, because instead of waiting, a day, 2 days, 3 days, a week, a month, maybe never for an answer on Stack Overflow or some of these forums, you can just go to AI. But I would suggest not absolutely explicitly telling it, do not give me the full answer. Just push me, nudge me in the right direction, and honestly, you will see so much more gains and so much more understanding from that. And in that aspect of things, AI has been extremely helpful because being able to have a basically tutor in your pocket just made my progression that much more enjoyable and obviously much faster because a lot of times people get stuck on learning these complex things because you can't find an answer or you can't find any real help and you just get stuck on it for weeks, for days, and you get frustrated and you kind of give up on it. So like being able to have that in your pocket as something that can kind of like help nudge you along was game changing for me, and like it helped speed up my learning process significantly. So in that kind of aspect of things, I think AI is extremely useful. I just don't use it just to give me answers, but to like generally just kind of help nudge me along. And in terms of actually writing code, for the first 3 months, 4 months, I was building all these things and I was asking AI, questions about things. And like, I want to see kind of like, and I always explicitly tell it, like, only give me answers based on best industry standards. And if I didn't understand something, or I didn't generally agree with something, or I was kind of thinking something else, I would ask it questions. I don't think people ask AI many questions because you can literally ask. One thing about it is that you can literally ask how I got this answer, why it came to this answer, why this answer instead of why not this answer. And like, you have to just be a curious mind in general. Like, you can't just let it do everything for you. You need to be able to like literally point at, like, ask as many questions as you want. Like, this isn't a person. It's not going to get annoyed with you. It's not going to get short with you. Like, you can literally just continually ask it questions. So like, instead of taking everything on face value that it tells you, because it is not always right. Trust me, it is not always right. There's been multiple times where I've had to like literally correct it on my own and be like, how the hell did you come to this answer? And then you have to like ask it these questions, and then you're going to learn so much about how it came to this answer and why it came to this answer that it's going to deepen your understanding. And it might even teach you some things in terms of like, I didn't even think about doing something that manner, or whether you want to use it that way or not. Like, honestly, it can expose you to so many different thoughts and techniques of doing something, because the thing I found about coding is that there is not one answer for everything. There's always like a million different ways of getting to a point. And your job is to find the best way there for your project. And the good thing about AI is it can give you so many different options. Like, you could ask it questions, and I don't feel like people ask it many direct questions. Like, I just straight up, if I don't agree with something, I'm just going to ask it, because who cares? This is literally what it's here for. Don't take it at face value. And for the first 3-4 months, any code it gives you, do not copy and paste. Do not. I would suggest that you literally, even if it gives you the full code you need for a page, you should write that out manually. Even if you have it off to the side, you should be writing this out manually, because it's going to make you so much better. And it's just going to form connections between your hand and your code and your brain and just what's being put out there in terms of what you want. It's just going to do it at an extremely important, crucial level that if you skip that, you're going to run into some serious issues. So I never really had that problem with AI. Like, I just think that if you use it as a tool as it is, instead of as the end all be all, I think there's not really that big of an issue. Obviously, companies are going to do what they're going to do, but I think that they are seeing that there's a lot of limitations still for AI, and continue to be, because the number one problem with programming, from my experience, my short experience, is not the actual coding, but the actual problem solving. And like, at the end of the day, it's just not that great. Like, there's a lot of problems that it causes more so than solves a lot of times, especially when you're dealing with some complex things and you start bringing in frameworks and you start bringing in third-party packages. You're going to have some problems. Like, you absolutely are going to have some problems. And until you kind of like get hands on and like you have a better understanding where you can guide AI into these answers, you can run some very, very troubling parts. And obviously, we're not even talking about like security of things, but I just been my general experience, just getting some coding. So the first thing I ever built for myself was, a portfolio page. Like, every pretty much journey, every coder's journey is basically like let's build a portfolio page. I actually did this from a YouTube tutorial. I don't remember the name. I might look it up and put in the links, but this is the first thing I built, just pure HTML, CSS, and very, very minute JavaScript. Honestly, understanding flexboxes, grids, all that good stuff was kind of the core point of this, and like building something that you can just put on and have out there as proof. Like, okay, I can do this. This is a good start. What started out as my just straight up portfolio page is quickly evolving to be my actual service page, like where I'm sending people, like clients in general, like are coming to and like seeing my work. So the next thing I need to do for this is, outside of explaining what I am, what I do is actually listing my services with prices and a way to like get in touch with me and stuff like that. So it's going to continue to evolve, but this started out as just strictly my portfolio page. Like most things, intro, what you do, a little bit of background info. I list my skills. As you can see, I've kind of built a lot. As somebody who is not only just a programmer, but honestly, branding, design, marketing was one of my first entry point into anything. Being able to tie everything together is honestly a cheat code. What I've seen and experienced so far, just from being in kind of the software development culture community now, is there's a lot of people that can build things. There's a lot of people that can design things, but there's not a lot of people that can build and design things and implement it for people and grow things for people. And if you can be kind of an in-house person that can connect those two worlds, because clients don't just need something built, they need to understand how they can use it or what they can do to kind of grow what they have doing. And if you can figure out a way to connect those two worlds together and be a full service in-house provider for that, the amount of work opportunities for you becomes exponentially larger. Just from my very short experience, like recent experience, I built somebody a website, and on WordPress, like most of these websites I'm building right now are just strictly on WordPress because honestly, very few people need a custom built website from scratch. Most people, most companies, most independent small businesses, all they need is a web presence, and WordPress is extremely useful for that. It's well tested, it's reliable, it's easy, fast to get up. I built this website 2-3 days, honestly, and then you add on another 4 just for communication between client and me, because that's always kind of the pain point for a lot of these things, is the back and forth and kind of trying to get them understand what you're trying to do and understand what they're trying to do, just that whole process. But the actual build, 2 days, if that. But my point is that I built the website, cool, made my little upfront money, whatever, did that, but they sent me a logo, clearly AI designed, and just not very usable. In terms of like, if you truly want to grow your business, you need to have a brand identity. You need logo, color, typography if you can, just a general overall identity that you can use for each and every piece of marketing that you can, because you want to associate your business with a logo, an image, a color, something, so that there is a clear, strong association. When people see this, they equate it to this. And a lot of businesses do not really know how to do that or understand how to do that. And they're not designers, they're not, developers. They just had a business idea. So like the logo they sent, it was like usable. It just wasn't very future proof. If you blew it up to any degree or shrunk it down too much, it's gonna look blurry and shitty as hell. It already had its own background on it. It can't be applied in many places. So, somebody who's worked with Photoshop and Illustrator for decades now and has a pretty strong grasp of graphic design, I'm like, look, it's such an easy cross-sell, upsell. It's like, you need more help, I can do this for you. I can redesign your logo, or I can vectorize it, or I can provide a brand kit. I can do all this quick, easy sell. Like that is just opens a whole nother door for you, that if you can not only develop, but you can like help build their service or their business or whatever they're trying to do, you become indispensable. And I guarantee if you show that you can not only do that side of like the development side of things, but help with this side, the marketing side, which quite honestly is the most lucrative thing, because everybody needs marketing, everybody needs branding, everybody needs this. This is this. You can't do business without that. So if you can combine those things together and show that you can not only do the technical development side of things, but actually deliver in terms of design, marketing, and whatnot, your door is infinitely open. And I guarantee they will come back to you for future work over and over and over again, because it's already happened. It's already happened. Like I've gotten many clients from one thing and then cross them over into this side of things. Or look, you do stuff for them and you notice they need this also. Like, hey, you don't need to go anybody else. I understand your business. I understand what you're trying to do already. We already have a communication. We already have a relationship. Let's work. So that's one thing I've noticed a lot, that it's not enough these days to just be a developer, just to be a designer. If you don't have the people skills, the personal skills, the understanding of the purpose of what they're building also, it's going to be harder to continue to get jobs and get work and be successful on your own if you're freelancing or whatnot. And if you also have those skills, it's going to be kind of more indispensable when you start working, if you want to work with like companies and actually have a corporate kind of job. But I would suggest like kind of learning these all other skills like Photoshop, Premiere Pro, Adobe Illustrator. They're just easy cross sells, upsells, and pretty much indispensable so far. I've noticed from working with businesses, and I don't think enough developers kind of have these in their toolbox, these three in their toolbox. And I mean, even if it's not these three, just something in this manner: image, video, graphics. If you can get these three things, man, the work is there. But yeah, I listed my skills, obviously WordPress, JavaScript, TypeScript, which I didn't talk about, but understanding TypeScript is pretty much a must these days. If you're working with React or JavaScript or anything production level, everything is pretty much built with it in mind. And as frustrating as it is to work with at first, it is extremely useful. It does cut down on so many issues that you might run into down the line, just simply because it alerts you before you do something stupid. And like, you're gonna get a lot of type errors, especially at first. You're gonna get a lot of fucking type errors, and it can be frustrating. It can be maddening. But a good thing about having AI is that it can help you kind of understand those type errors, and the more you see them and the more you kind of start to correct them, you will start to find yourself correcting them without even needing to reach for your AI or ask questions for anything else, because okay, I understand what the problem is here. But if you're working with AI, I highly suggest telling them, do not type this to any. It's like there is a clear preference with AI to do things as fast as possible and to just get it done. So if it can't come up with the answer right away, a lot of times its answer is, let's type it to any. And that doesn't solve the problem at all. It just masks the error. So if you're going to ask it for these type errors and fixes and problems explicitly, for my suggestion, do not let it type to any. And if it does, explicitly say, I don't want this cast to any. Show me the solid fix. And honestly, it typically is pretty good at like giving you a true answer, but it gets lazy. It tries to cut corners and it's going to cast any. And that's just going to cause problems down the line. So yeah, this is just kind of my skills, my project kind of side of things. As you see, I'm going to touch into some of these in another stream because there's some cool shit here. My first real projects on my own, a infinite meme machine, which taught me how to handle like canvases and images and tapping into AI APIs. That was a big one for me. This is a full-on social media platform, um, built from scratch, built on React using Shutcn, telling all that. Um, yeah, there's a lot that went into this. Obviously, there's a lot of tools, a lot of things I learned from doing this. Just went up recently. Definitely gonna touch into this one. Probably do some live coding for this one. But you go into here, obviously got my case studies. So people that maybe want to learn about like website portfolios and when you put in whatnot, like this is kind of how I have my setup. I have my projects in here. Honestly, I've had clients come here and literally be like, hey, I saw this and then I read about it and I was kind of impressed. And that got me some work. So if you do anything, any project, especially first starting out, it doesn't matter how small, how stupid, this is literally a meme generator. Write about it. Make a case study about it. Give all the points to it. It's good for SEO. Trust me, it's good for SEO. It's good for Google. It's good for search engine. And people like to see that you have a grasp of what the hell you're doing. So like fully putting this out there and like taking the time and like really showing your thought process and what this was all about and like the skills you kind of built for it. It's not only good for jobs, but it's also good for clients. So I would suggest also listing I was just listing out your projects. I don't care how small, whatever it is. And this is my work section where, even if it's personal, put it in here. This is my personal brand, personal kind of editorial, but it is still work. It's something that I built. So yeah, I'll probably go through some of these another time, but list your work, build your portfolio site, kind of continue to grow and evolve it. Just don't put it out and never touch it again. Continue to update it. It's good for SEO. It's good for Google. And when people ask, because honestly, just from experience now, having a few clients, is the first thing to ask is like, hey, where can I see some of your work? What do you do? What are your skills? It's nice to be able to just boom. Here's my URL. Check it out. They can do their own research, do their own perusing, see what they like, see what they don't, kind of understand what you're capable of. And like, that is the quickest way to kind of like quit all the back and forth of trying to prove what you can do and show what you can do. If they just check out a site that is well built, and because the site itself is proof of what you can do, is a huge game changer, honestly, in terms of work for me. So yeah, I mean, it's been a journey. Definitely been a journey from learning how to code and program and whatnot, and kind of learning the ins and outs and really understanding where I want to take things, what I like to do, and getting more comfortable with these things. It's been a journey, and it's one that I don't expect to end anytime soon. It's one that I've fully fallen in love with, and kind of starting to fully get confident with the process of things and whatnot. And in the future, I'm definitely going to probably be back, a couple days, get on more streams and do some live coding and tap into projects that I'm actively working on and kind of work through things and talk about things and whatnot. So if you have any kind of questions about, coding or programming, like my journey, or you want to start yourself, you want to understand, you have questions about where to begin, what should you do, what to do, like feel free to reach out. I'm still learning, I'm still getting my feet wet, but I am absolutely, open to discussing it. I love kind of helping people out and kind of giving my experiences and what I kind of see of things so far. So other than that, I'll be back. Definitely be back. Just a little quick short intro stream, but I'll definitely be back to do some live coding and tap into that more side of things. But yeah, this has just been kind of what I've learned so far in my journey of coding. Well, thank you for tuning in. Always reach out if you have any questions. Till next time, peace.